Brittany Renner confronted Fresh and Fit. Myron told her she is not special, and Brittany got in her feelings. One thing led to another. And by the end of the podcast, Myron Gaines had Brittany Renner agreeing with him. Let me repeat that. By the end of the podcast, Myron Gaines had Brittany Renner agreeing with him. Evolution of the Fresh and Fit podcast, as well as the evolution of one Myron Gaines himself. So Brittany Renner has been making the rounds lately. And not in the way you think or the way she used to make the rounds. No, she's been on all the big time podcasts, right? She did Joe Budden. She did Vlad TV, DJ Academics, No Jumper, maybe The Breakfast Club. I don't know. All the big ones. And of course, you guys just saw Kevin Samuels. And you guys can check out the breakdown I did on that. Just do a quick search for that. Well, she recently did another podcast with ACK, but this time they were joined by Fresh and Fit. That's right, guys. Myron Gaines and Fresh Prince CEO joined the podcast with Brittany Miss Renner. And to say that the beginning of this podcast was contentious is accurate. Listen, man, Brittany came out swinging when she confronted Myron, right? Myron handled that confrontation brilliantly, as he did on the Flagrant 2 podcast. And that's one of the two main points I want to touch on in terms of the Off the Record podcast with ACK. It is very, very clear that Fresh and Fit both learned a lot from Abba and Preach. From the Abba and Preach, fiasco last summer. And for those of you who have been living under a rock the past calendar year, Abba and Preach made an appearance on the Fresh and Fit podcast. Abba was in the studio, and Preach joined remotely. One of the topics they discussed was paying for box, patronizing working girls, putting ladies of the night to work, so to speak. Now, during that podcast, Preach acted like a woman and exited the podcast because he didn't want to offend his wife, which, from his standpoint, I suppose I can understand given the physics involved. Not to be mean-spirited here, but it is what it is. Preach's wife is not my type, but she seems to be his type, so I'm not mad at that. You can draw whatever conclusion you want from that. Anyway, Abba finished out the podcast, and everything seemed cool until Abba and Preach launched a premeditated smear campaign against Fresh and Fit when they posted a video entitled "Fresh and Fit are capping hard. We debated legalizing selling poom poom." Now, I want you guys to keep in mind, I have no issue with the fact that this was all premeditated, okay? It was a sound strategy. They had a plan, and they executed it to perfection. They executed it to perfection. It's not something I would do, but listen, I have different priorities than Abba and Preach. So I'm not gonna be the guy who says, "OMG, that was totally pre-planned." Yeah. I got news for you. Most content is pre-planned. Just because we don't like certain elements of certain content creators doesn't make their strategy any less valid. Separate the art from the artist, guys. Listen, Michael Jackson has, let's call them, questionable accusations against him, but that does not negate the fact that he is one of the greatest recording artists of all time. James Brown had, domestic Duracell charges against him. Guess what? He's still the king. He's still the godfather of soul. Anyway, Abba and Preach laid a trap for Fresh and Fit. And Myron and Fresh, they took the bait hook, line, and sinker. They stepped on what appeared to be a burning bag, trying to put out a fire, and ended up with shit all over their shoes. Abba and Preach, off that trap, essentially ate off of Fresh and Fit for the better part of half of the summer. They were putting out, right at the beginning, they were putting out 2 videos a day. Now, it slowed down considerably after that, but to this day, Abba and Preach still do videos on Fresh and Fit anytime Myron and or Fresh go viral, which, if you've been paying attention, is about once every 10 to 14 days, give or take a day or two in either direction. But in the beginning, Myron and Fresh could not have handled that situation any worse. They talked about Preach's wife, which caused Preach to flex his fake toughness and challenge Fresh to a boxing match. And for the record, I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there. I don't think Preach can fight, okay? Just because you could fight doesn't mean you can fight. And, I mean, I don't know, from the looks of him, it's pretty clear that he hasn't been in a physical confrontation with another man in a while, which is a good thing. Listen, I'm not going to hate on him for that. It's been it'll be 7 years for me in November. But if I had to put my money on me versus him, I'm taking me every time. I could be wrong, but I seriously doubt it. And you can tell him I said that. I don't know, maybe his wife will give him permission to fake challenge me to a boxing match. We'll see. Anyway, going back to how Fresh and Fit handled things, they made major mistakes. And because of this, they were dragged up and down the internet. All told, I think they ended up losing somewhere in the neighborhood of 40,000 subscribers, and Abba and Preach netted damn near 500,000 subs themselves. So, mission accomplished. Their plan definitely worked. Everyone talked about how they were finished and how they were done and this and that. Well, suffice it to say, Fresh and Fit have more than recovered. They went from roughly 460,000-ish subs after cracking 500,000 and losing 40K to now over 560,000 subs. Hell, even the lead attorney tried telling people that their channel was going down in 7 days because Myron and Fresh have so many haters. He chose to believe it. Well, 7 days came and went, and Fresh and Fit are still here. Anyway, the lessons learned from the summer of 21 is clearly benefiting them now, because Myron and Fresh are going into hostile territories in terms of those who vehemently oppose what we teach in this sector of the web, and they are handling themselves brilliantly. They rarely make missteps, guys. They never lose their cool. They never get loud. Both of them are cool, they're calm, they're collected. They almost perfectly articulate their points and are so on point that the only thing the opposition can really do is insult them because they just don't have an answer. And the reason they don't have answers is because the truth is on our side. This is something that Kevin and I have talked about many times. I remember one conversation I had with Kevin a while back, and he told me, and I'm paraphrasing here, he said, "Look, Donovan, I'm good at what I do. Okay, I'm great at debating. I'm great at staying on topic. I'm great at keeping the conversation where it needs to be. But the reason I'm undefeated is because the truth is on my side. No matter what these women say, they know I'm telling the truth." Kevin is right, guys. He is good at what he does. He's actually the best. But the reason he's undefeated is because his talking points are rooted in truth. Well, it's the same as Fresh and Fit. It's the same as myself, same as Coach EO, the same with Rollo Tomasi. We know we're not misleading anybody with what we teach. We, in this community, we don't have to manipulate statistics to make them say what we want them to say. We don't have to use underhanded debate techniques to alter the narrative. We don't have to lie to anybody. All of our talking points are rooted in empirical data, millions of anecdotes from millions of men with the same experiences, and the truth. Women end most relationships. That's the truth. Women are hypergamous. That's not a bad thing, but it's also the truth. Women are attracted to resources and aroused by good genetics. That's the truth. Western culture incentivizes women to divorce their husbands. That's the truth. Women have characteristics, habits, and traits that constantly put their relationships at risk. Social media, dating apps, outings with coworkers, girls' night out, girls' trips, and so forth. That's the truth. Women have unrealistic expectations relative to a combination of their own sexual and relationship market value. That's the truth. Most women have slept around indiscriminately at some point in their lives. That's the truth. Guys, I can go on all day. But gentlemen, the reason this community exists is because what we talk about is true. And when you combine the truth along with the ability to articulate the truth in environments that are in direct opposition to that truth, you get guys like Myron Gaines, who is showing that he has learned and applied the lessons he learned last summer. He was on the Flagrant 2 podcast, and Akash and Alex berated insulted, and shamed Myron at every turn. But not only did Myron keep his cool, his responses were so razor sharp, Akash had to tell a cheesy, Neanderthal joke to throw off the audience, even though that joke had nothing to do with what they were talking about. Myron and Fresh have stared down every hit piece, every hater, every big content creator trying to cancel them, every lie, every clout chaser making up fake pregnancies. And they have turned themselves into battle-tested men who are not afraid to have these conversations live and on enemy territory. Hell, even O'Shea had to bend the knee. O'Shea had to bend the knee and acknowledge that he was wrong about him. Of course, we all know that doesn't matter. Well, it appears that the same thing happened on the Off the Record podcast with DJ Academics. Brittany Renner confronted Fresh and Fit. Myron told her she is not special, and Brittany got in her feelings. One thing led to another. And by the end of the podcast, Myron Gaines had Brittany Renner agreeing with him. Let me repeat that. By the end of the podcast, Myron Gaines had Brittany Renner agreeing with him. Yes, gentlemen, I did not stutter. Brittany agreed with Myron by the end of the podcast. This is what happens when you have the truth on your side, gentlemen. For all of Brittany's flaws, she's not stupid. Okay? She's not, now, don't get me wrong, she's not some mental Svengali. But she's smarter than your average attractive woman. And in the end, even she had to come correct and acknowledge that what we talk about on this side of the web is the truth. Akash and Alex couldn't do it. Akash is too pussy-whipped by the only woman he's ever stuck his dick in. And Alex really acted like the typical black male, which is to hate on other black men who have the balls to look men like him right in the eye and say, nigga, it was a joke, and I ain't apologizing to you or anyone else. The Fresh and Fit boys have evolved, gentlemen, and we are starting to see the results. Yes, they stepped in shit with Abba and Preach. Rookie mistake. They fell for a trap, a couple of virtue-signaling weasels who couldn't punch their way out of a paper bag, and yes, I'm including Preach in that, and again, you can tell him I said that. But the way Myron and Fresh are able to handle themselves in any environment, that is a testimony to how hard they work. I mean, think about it. Even every single night, they are dealing with girls who call them names, who shame them, who insult them, who assault them, they pull blickies, they yell, they scream, they get disrespectful, and they stay out of pocket. This is why their frame is unshakable, guys. They deal with this nonsense every night to show you what it's really like out here in these streets. This is why bitch-made men like Akash and Alex and entitled bimbos like Brittany Renner throw all kinds of insults and shaming language at them and cannot move them off their square, especially when they stand 10 toes down. Fresh and Fit should really thank Abba and Preach for what they did for them. If not for their shenanigans, Myron and Fresh might still be at the same point they were at last summer before Abba and Preach put out all these hit pieces on them. And the culmination of their growth and lessons learned is evident on the Off the Record podcast with DJ Academics.